Hello, once more, and welcome back to the 2024 Big Ten predictions here with the Week 8 predictions. After going 5-2 in Week 7, my record now of the season is now 62-19 on the year, 5-2 last week. This week we have another 7 games on the schedule. Starting out with this first one tomorrow night, Oregon and Purdue set Hicks into Oregon Ducks against the Purdue Boilermakers, who will have one win on the year 1-4, unfortunately. Look at this matchup on paper. This one looks like it's going to be an interesting game. It's Oregon's first time having to travel across the 3 time zones with the time zone issues. Last week, Penn State snapped that streak of 1-7, being the first team to win. Second team to win to be 2-8 because Washington lose. Ohio State lost by a point to Oregon. So, yes, and Minnesota did win as well last week. So the Big Ten is now 3-9 when you have to travel cross country, across 2 time zones or more. And Oregon now has to put up for the first time against Purdue this week, who's 1-4. Ducks ranked number 2 in the country. Last time Purdue had number 2 team come in, ranked in the top 2 that won a game against that they beat. You have to go back to 2017 when they beat Ohio State in the night game under the lights mid-season, and they give Ohio State their first loss back in 2017. Was ranked number 2. This game to me feels a little similar. To me, it does feel like Purdue has to play for a lot as a team. It looks like it could be a game that could be their bowl game potentially, because they're 1-4. If they don't win a lot of games the rest of the year, they might not make a bowl game. So this could be Purdue's bowl game to play potentially at home, try to win against Oregon. I do think it's gonna be a close game, but I do think Oregon gets the 4th win for teams that have to travel across time zones to put the Big Ten to put the teams at 4-9 this year. I do think Oregon gets a win. I do think it's close though, maybe by a touchdown or less, maybe tomorrow night. So we'll see what happens there. So give the Ducks the win there, starting out tomorrow's games. Next up, we have to go to Indiana. Nebraska 5-1 coming in. Indiana 6-0 on the year. Indiana, by the way, 6-0 on the year. One of the other Big Ten teams that's up top in the conference, up there with Oregon, Penn State, all 6-0. Indiana, the surprise team of the 18 teams this year, you could say, and I'll say that right now. First year head coach has a team that's 6-0. Surprisingly, Indiana, they've put together some good games this year, put together some good wins. I will say for fact, and not to say that the least, but Indiana's one of those teams, they're surprising people. Nebraska, 5-1 coming in. It's a tough test for Indiana, though, I think, this week, playing against Nebraska at home on a Saturday afternoon. And a game of the week this week. I do think Indiana's going to get a win, though, this week. I do think it's going to be close, though. And I do think Indiana gets to win to get to 7-0, become the first Big Ten team to 7-0 on the season. So good that here's the one there for me in week number 8 here. Moving on to the next matchup, UCLA, 1-4, has to travel to Rutgers, who sets up at 4-2. Rutgers last week, I don't know if they played last week. I did predict them to win a few weeks ago. Though, Rutgers last week did not play. Rutgers, that was coming off a loss, 14-7 to Nebraska after their bye week they played 2 weeks ago. I didn't pick Nebraska in that one. Rutgers playing UCLA, who's 1-4. And UCLA, their story, not so bright this year as a Big Ten team. They've lost 2 games to teams in the former Big Ten, Indiana and Minnesota. Those are 2 games they've taken losses in. But to me, it looks as if you can say a lot of things about this UCLA team. The Big Ten, they just haven't stood the test of time becoming a Big Ten team their first 5 games of the year. Only win against Hawaii at this moment in time, going into week 8. And having to travel across the country to the East Coast to play against Rutgers on Saturday. It's going to be a little tougher for them, I think. I think Rutgers does get the win here in this matchup. Gets their 5th win of the year. So I'm going to give Rutgers the win here, as I do think they turn it into a win at home against UCLA. As I do think UCLA drops to 1-5 on the year, just like Purdue. Moving on to the next matchup, Wisconsin, the Badgers, traveling to Illinois this weekend to take on the Northwestern Wildcats. And the Wildcats' final home game at their makeshift Big Ten Stadium on the lakefront before they play 2 games against Ohio State and against Illinois both at Wrigley Field later on this year, later on in the season. So Northwestern's final home game, Wisconsin fans are going to be coming in. And Wisconsin fans, they usually make the drive from Madison, Wisconsin to Evanston to play the Wildcats every year. This has been a matchup over the last 10 years. You could look at it and say multiple things. That Northwestern's had some pretty good wins. They've had some upsets. Wisconsin's had some wins as well in the series. And you could look at it and say, okay, these two teams are Big Ten teams. They play Big Ten style football. They both win, which is correct. And with that being said, it's going to be a tough game, I think, for Wisconsin to have to come to play Northwestern at a smaller stadium, smaller venue. The Northwestern fans might be more into it. It's not going to be as loud, I think. But I do think Wisconsin's going to have a good crowd as well coming to this game as well. In the matchup, I do think Wisconsin gets the win, though, as I do think Northwestern gets a loss this week, unfortunately, on Saturday afternoon. So get the Badgers the win there for me. Moving on, next matchup, top 25 now, to talk about the Michigan Wolverines going into Illinois, to Champaign, Illinois this week on Saturday in a game, which is going to be interesting to see by far, I do think. Illinois, top 25, Michigan, top 25. These two teams are teams that play well. Michigan, though, the defending national champions, with 2 losses this year, both to Washington on the road a few weeks ago, and then also a loss as well to Texas at home. So 2 losses. One of those are those cross-country matchups. They had to travel from the Eastern time zone to the Pacific time zone and lose a night game for Washington. Unfortunately, looking at this matchup, Illinois and Michigan, it's going to be one of those games that's tough, I think, for both teams. I think it's going to be a close game for the first time. Looking at Illinois, their team, if they can get a win, they'll be 5-2. They'll be 5-1, I think, or 6-1, whatever they are at the moment. But Illinois, looking at this matchup, it's going to be a tough game playing against Michigan. Michigan can win games. They'll let you win the first half usually, then they'll blow you out in the second half typically. And I do think Michigan will get a win, though, this week. With that being said, so get the Wolverines their win for me here in this one on Saturday afternoon. Moving on to our next matchup. USC, their second time going across to the Eastern time zone as they head to Maryland, College Park, Maryland, to take on the Maryland Terps. Looking at this matchup, USC's 4-2 of the year coming in as they travel out to Maryland. Maryland this year, they've had a little tough stretch this season. Not as good as I thought they would be, but looking at Maryland overall, they're a good team when they play games, and they're a good team when they know how to play, by the way. Looking at this matchup on paper, USC, Maryland. USC, last time they traveled to the Eastern time zone, they lost to Michigan a few weeks ago, way back in week number 4, unfortunately. And looking at the matchup, for Maryland, it's a home game against USC. USC is second time traveling across country. Do I think USC's learned the first time to travel to the East Coast to play Michigan? Yes, I do think they've learned a bit about themselves. They stayed in that game against Michigan. Against Maryland, I think it's going to be an interesting game because you have another West Coast team going out to the East Coast. And like I said, with Oregon playing Purdue this week, I do think Oregon gets a close win against Purdue. But I do think USC gets a close win as well against Maryland. Not as close as Maryland wants it to be. I think Maryland will want to win, but I do think USC gets the win here in this one after playing Michigan earlier on the road. I do think they've learned from that, and I do think they get a win here on Saturday afternoon. Moving on, last game of the night. East Lansing, Michigan State. It's their homecoming game as they take on the Iowa Hawkeyes, my favorite team. The Hawkeyes, if you saw my videos last week from that game against Washington, I didn't get all 4 of the field goals that Iowa got in the game. No, didn't get any of the videos of the touchdowns. But looking at this matchup, Iowa Michigan State, it's their 11th meeting against each other since 2008. And both teams are 5-5 in the matchups. And surprisingly, it's going to be the first matchup in East Lansing since 2017, when I believe lost that game 17-10 that year in 2017. Overall, 5th matchup overall in East Lansing since 2008. Each team is 2-2 when they play there. Looking at the matchups, I did look at it yesterday's stats. And even though each team is 2-2, Iowa won. Iowa has won, even though each team is in 2-2. Iowa has won the last two against Michigan State and back in 2024, last year, and then back in 2020 as well. Iowa got a big win against Michigan State as well at home in the 2020 season to get their first win of the year after they started 0-2 in the 2020 season. So looking at this matchup overall, Iowa has won the last two in the matchups. Looking at it for a tough game. This is going to be a tough game for Iowa, even though they're 4-2 on the year. They won against Washington last week. It's going to be a tough night game. In night games in East Lansing, 2009, Iowa won a game against Michigan State on the last second on a touchdown pass in 2009. As the last big win against Michigan State on the road for Iowa. And then the last time they played there in 2017, they lost 17-10. This matchup, I think, is going to be an interesting one to see. I think it's going to be another close game. These two teams have played close games in the last few years where it's been one score or less. The last few times they've met up, 2023 and then back in 2017. I do think it's going to be another close one here. I do think Iowa, though, gets the win late. I'm not going to say how, but I do think the Hawkeyes get the win here on Saturday night in East Lansing to get to 5-2 on the season. There you have it. That's my 2024 Week 8 Big Ten predictions. Taking 5 of the road teams this week out of 7 games. So surprising there on that part. We'll see how I turned out. Comment below who your favorite team is playing if you think they're going to win. With that being said, please remember to watch, like, subscribe, never forget to tell friends as well to do today if they haven't done so yet already. Also, don't forget that notification button below so you know when I upload a new video. With that being said, have a good day. Stay safe and peace out. I'll see you right back here in the Week 9 prediction video next week. Bye for now. Peace out, everyone. See you next week in Week 9. Bye.